A very warm welcome, dear listeners. You're listening to the DigiCompetence podcast with Anne Cork and Philip Ramin.
Yes, and today we're speaking to Nancy Nemes. Nancy is a high-tech executive and an entrepreneur, a global connector and a digital Darwinist. She's the founder of Mrs. AI and Humanize, a European platform that supports education, innovation, diversity and inclusion in artificial intelligence. Nancy has worked at Microsoft, Google, Avnet, SAP in a variety of leadership roles across Europe, North America, and South America. And currently, Nancy is leading the Amazon Web Services partnerships team in Central Europe. In 2019, Nancy was named one of the most inspiring businesswomen in European technology by the international organization InspiringFifty. Her book, the Proust QuestionnAIre, Artificial Intelligence in a Stunningly Diverse Way, published in February 2020, is top ranking in positive reader reviews. And her initiative, Humanize, Nancy is partnering with a distinguished international team of senior executives and acclaimed thought leaders across diverse industries, cultures, languages, and mindsets. And their shared goal is to help humans be the winners of the digital era. Nancy is also engaged in supporting women in tech. She's also a mentor to startups and an investor. And since 1990, she's been involved in charitable activities benefiting her native country, Romania, and with a focus on supporting children hospices and animals. A fun fact about Nancy, though, is that she regularly moves furniture around in her houses. She's a collection of antiques and plays the piano, and she says change is a necessity of her life. Welcome to our podcast, Nancy.
Oh, thank you so much, Anne. Thank you so much, Philip, for having me.
Nancy, what is it about changing the furniture around that fascinates you? And does it surprise family members? Do you have any funny experiences about it when you're moving antiques around the house too?
Well, amazing. First of all, I'm so glad you picked that part of my life, but thank you for the fantastic introduction before. It sounds like a few lives. So thank you for that. I'm really glad to be here, really excited to talk to this beautiful audience and to both of you today. Look, furniture, I grew up with moving furniture. This is something I probably inherited from my mother. Who was basically sitting in her chair, and this is what I do in the mornings as well. I get my coffee, I sit in a chair and have a view on the rest of the house or apartment, and then I see something in a corner and I think, that's not perfect, so I need to align this to 1 more centimeter to the right. So I go there, and probably my husband is of course now. I told him, this is coming together in the package. When you got me, you got all of this together. I think it's for me, aesthetics is very important. And aesthetics should be, I love looking at people. I love looking at objects. I love looking at technology. And I think all of these should be aesthetic. Even mathematics is an aesthetic piece of art, actually, even if it is science. And I would say if we surround ourselves by beauty and aesthetics, then we can make our lives and our interactions a lot more human.
What a lovely way to look at life, Nancy. Very, very lovely. Talking about aesthetics, we've heard that you don't like the name artificial intelligence. If you were to have a choice, what would you name it?
This is a great question, Anne. And look, I mean, the word artificial, because we have to decompose this, and there are smart people, for many, many years that were working on defining intelligence, first of all, right? But the most important piece is this part of artificial intelligence gives us both headache and opportunity. Since the media is calling it artificial intelligence, probably a couple of years back, maybe 6, 7 years, that the media picked up that term. This term is not new, right? But since the media picked up, human beings are really getting very excited and very creative about what it means. And so then we make a lot of stories up that may not be aligned to what the real meaning is of this technology. So for me, it is technology. And my definition of artificial intelligence is very broad. It's really the broadest, in the broadest sense, it encompasses not only machine learning and deep learning. I would call it machine intelligence, if it would be after me, and I know other experts who do the same. Machine intelligence, if you call it artificial, of course, there is a different connotation. But I think really starting with a broad definition, other experts are narrowing the definition into just saying machine learning, deep learning is what AI is. For me, it's the combination of software and hardware that creates machines that can emulate human intelligence. But it's by far not the same as human intelligence, obviously. So yeah, so just like we do in life, you know, anything that is artificial is not great. So still, we are living with this, and then everyone has to define it for themselves. And depending on what aspect or what people you talk to, you will get a different definition of this technology.
Nancy, you hear lots of people when they hear the word artificial intelligence or machine intelligence, as we've just learned, they think it's something techie. It's really something techie. But when you work with people from so many disciplines when you're dealing with AI. Why?
Myself, yes. Well, look, this is why I put together this community, Miss AI and Humanize, is because I wanted to show the diversity in technology and how important that is. At the end of the day, AI is just a branch of software engineering, right? That mimics that human behavior, that mimics human thought process, that is able to learn, to reason, to adapt, but also to self-correct as we advance the technology. So that's the first aspect. And then for me, there is a lot of temptation in this you know, artificial intelligence world. There is a lot of temptation by humans to also talk about artificial life. You know, so there is speculation that, you know, this whole AI may end in super civilization, you know, and the synthesis of the whole solar system and life. And, you know, we're going to constantly improve this to the point that it will destroy ourselves, improve and extend humans, you know, spreading outward. Come on. So for me, I'm not part of this science fiction speculation. For me, not even in the distant future, you will have anything like that. So that's why I think in connection to that machine intelligence, the promise that the technology makes is that it will enhance what humans do. And that's why it's so important to have a broad understanding and to put together minds from different disciplines, from different backgrounds, to work together, not only in defining what it is, but also in regulating, in developing characteristics that would lead, you know, humans to really, really take advantage of this and understand what it is. So for me, it's practical benefits we get from the technology. This is really the reason why I combined not only business and technology people, but also neuroscientists, doctors, artists, philosophers, and many more in the community to collaborate and talk together. And we did this back in 2018. I think it was the first global community that combines such a diversity of minds so that we can, number one, try to de-hype a little bit this whole space, but number two, really understand how all these disciplines should work together for the benefit of humanity. Right?
Nancy, that's a very good point here. You were mentioning de-hyping. I like the term actually, and I mean you have been involved into high tech, into technology now for a very long time. But basically, what I observe is that the cycles and the developments are always the same. There's a new technology, it's getting hyped. We have over expectations about that. We sometimes have a lot of myths about this technology, and then we are getting down to earth. So Why is that? Why is it always the same, like the same story, no matter whether it's this AI at the moment, or it has been like the internet, it has been Industry 4.0 or digitalization as such? I mean, don't we learn about the technological history? Is there no progress, or why is that we always have this this cycle, so to say?
I love it. What a great question, Philip. Yes. Well, it sparks our imagination, right? It sparks our creativity. That's the intrinsic difference between machine and human intelligence, right? Is that humans are able to create, humans are able to think further and to make all these connections in a manner that a machine cannot. And when you think about really how this whole emotional intelligence plays a role, right? When you think about all the great successes of humanity, what has played a crucial role since antiquity, right? It was the unconscious. And this what makes the difference. The intelligence, and that intelligence that thousands of generations before us have collected as they were facing all those very most unprecedented, unpredictable situations over thousands of years, right? And that intelligence has been stored in the unconscious. And this is what sparks now us to, repeatedly break into the same patterns, because it is not from today. And that intelligence that has been stored in the unconscious. Now, the problem is, to your question, Philip, is how do we train the unconscious in this action of solving difficult technological or scientific or social problems? And so I think it will never stop. It will continue to be like that, thankfully, and thanks to our imagination and creativity. And of course, you can find multiple answers on how to solve these difficult technologies, and we'll always come up with creative ways of solving the problems, as we see over the years, so many introspections of great writers or great mathematicians or chemists, right? Like Pasteur, for example, or biologists like Darwin, I like to define myself a digital Darwinist, because it tells actually a lot about how we evolve and how we should keep evolving with the technology together. But that all, in my opinion, begins with a thorough knowledge. And this is why I like talking to you so much for the Digi podcast, or Digi Knowledge. It's so important to have digital knowledge and digital education. I think you guys are doing a fantastic work for humanity by providing this platform, because only through knowledge and deep knowledge of the field and its problems, and only with such fruitful discussions, we can start really looking at the problems and start challenging some of the science fiction hype that happens, and then start. And I think we can see it now. If you speak with the C-suite these days, also in Germany and other countries, we can see that this hype, which was here for a couple of years, is starting to fade, and people start asking, okay, how is this benefiting? How do I make money with this? That's a very important question. How is this benefit my community, my company, my own life? And so I think the hype will start to fade, and then we'll see some application of technology, just like we've seen in the last 50 years.
So first of all, thanks for your kind words. Highly appreciated. So quite happy to hear that from such a personality like you, Nancy. Thank you so much. But I want to recap one point. I mean, you have mentioned the relevance of interdisciplinarity, of diversity, of bringing together many professions. And I have the same opinion about that. But I need to say that I still observe all the silos everywhere. So we have been talking a lot about involving philosophy, ethics, history, all of these important disciplines into tech. But I mean, isn't it the truth that tech is still like tech in a very narrow sense, at least in most of the companies and associations and institutions? And there is still not that involvement, this cross-functional involvement, which might provide a lot of great insights, fruits, and new reflections how we might solve the problems of humankind in the next years and decades. So what is your observation about that? I'm a little bit like disappointed that despite the fact that we have been talking about the necessity so much, becoming more multidisciplinary, etc. I mean, if we look into the corporations and on the market and the research, it's quite silo-oriented still today. That's at least my observation. I think we are missing so many potentials in the discussions, in opening up our minds and finding maybe completely new solutions for the problems we have ahead.
Yeah, couldn't put it better. Absolutely right. This is what it is today. I think we went through the last probably 20, 30 years of, dealing with really an amazing progress technologically. If you think about how the world has changed in the last 20, maybe maximum 30 years, look at the cities, what we have built. Look at the cities in Middle East or in Singapore or in China, the scale of the buildings, the scale of what we do with computing hardware these days. It's unbelievable how much progress we have. And so then, of course, in order to get that progress, you have to be very specialized. And so to your point, we get very specialized now into the technological aspect. I think, though, that we need more what we used to have and what I would call polymath. We need more polymaths, people that think in multiple dimensions. Probably that should be taught in university, if not even before at school. So clearly, needless to say, this is a completely different conversation, but our educational system needs a revolution, right? And one of the things that I would propose is that we start looking at the last universalists or polymaths that we had in the past, right? So for example, Poincaré was really one of the last polymaths of this century. Did we all know? Because I was surprised when I learned about this. He was a philosopher of modern science. He was created a foundation for the modern chaos theory, for topology. We would not have GPS without Poincaré. He was a pioneer of what we call today machine learning, right? And he wrote something, I think back in 1908, over 115 years ago. He wrote about the intuition in mathematics as he was researching on celestial mechanics, right? And he wrote down what would later become the 4 stages of the Gestalt model of learning and psychology. And he was talking about saturation, incubation, inspiration, and verification. So these are areas, and I was thinking about how would we apply to the society today and also to AI. So when you think about saturation, the first stage in the Gestalt model of learning, this would be really data gathering, right? Then you go into incubation, you start classify and analyze your data. You go into the inspiration phase, you start identifying pattern and insights. Then you go into the verification phase, where the real world testing happens and the confirmation of your model, okay? But what happened later is really interesting, because Einstein initially was a little bit critical to Poincaré's point, and he thought, it's a little bit, ethereal, you're up there in the, mathematical Ethereum. But then Einstein was thinking a long time and later suggested a 5th phase, which he called it a practical step. And he said, beyond this whole saturation, incubation, inspiration, verification, we need also perspiration, right? We need to put the effort into bringing back the whole human aspects and making sure that we go broad. And so Einstein called it perspiration. If you would apply to AI, this would be basically the process improvements in the end, right? The automated responses the machine would give. So this is a very simple, modern example of how we should think beyond the technical aspects and why we need polymaths today. We need people that really think beyond your own discipline and start to think very broad. And diversity is number one. When I think about diversity, and when I actually created Miss AI, and I called it Miss AI because I wanted to draw attention to the fact that we need more women in technology, but I also want to make sure we think about diversity in a much, much broader term than this. And so if we would have polymaths, then this whole conversation will become de-siloed, Philip. I
When
would
you're
say that.
thinking about polymaths and verschiedene and different things, Nancy, when you go into, originally you spoke about emotional intelligence being one of the key things that we need to use also when dealing with AI. Do you think that our modern training system or our school system is supporting emotional intelligence, learning emotional intelligence enough?
I think we would all agree that the answer is no.
Mm-hmm.
So the answer is a clear no. I personally, and now I'm out of school for many decades, right? But there was not a single question. You know, we need street smarts and we need book smarts. We are okay in book smarts. We are not doing well in street smarts. Not teaching, not only the school system, not only on the educational system, but also not the family. So I think it's becoming better, more. You know, we get a bit more awareness, and I see people, and especially women, I have to say, that put more emphasis on the emotional intelligence aspect. And just talking about it, we have the awareness now. If you think about deeply, if you look at the academia world, you have a lot of people that really are incredibly book smart, but have trouble really even managing their lives because it's very hard to combine emotional and you know, and the technicalities in this very complex society. So teaching emotional intelligence at school is one thing, but also living it at home and in the society is very important, is another thing. And there is a lot that we can still do, obviously.
When we think about the technology education we have today, starting in elementary school and school, universities, etc., what is missing, or are we really learning the right things in order to prepare people for this, you know, technology age we are totally in at the moment? What are we lacking of? Is there something you would say, okay, this should be part of the education system, and that would help us maybe to have a more open mindset and maybe a broader mindset about technologies, not only on AI, I'm talking about technology in general.
Yeah. No, definitely, absolutely. There is a lot we can do to deepen our understanding, and again, going cross-disciplinary, I think, is so important. Giving children this taste, you know, the interest of looking at different areas, of looking at different, not only looking at different disciplines, but looking at one discipline from different angles. That is what I would call the deepest level of diversity in learning and also in education, is if we could really work together on identifying what advancements we need in both bringing the society, bringing the education system into a state of collaboration. I think deep collaboration is what we need these days. And we can see how divided the world is, right? And we can see it's unbelievable. I was watching last weekend on CNN the two astronauts that are stranded now in space, right?
Yeah.
And I think one question, somebody asked them one question, which is, how do you look at life from up there? And this lady said, there was a man and a woman who were now all over in the news. And she said, when I look up, I'm up here and I look at Earth, then I realize there is so much pain down there that should not be. And there is so much fight that should not be. If you really start to abstract your thinking a little bit, then we will arrive at this way of collaborating. And I think that's the key, is how do we collaborate to not only with each other, but between disciplines? How do we structure our thinking in a way that allows even the collaboration with our emotional part of ourselves? And in that way, I think we can, over time, it will take time, but this would be for me the next evolution in humanity, is that taking this to the next level. I think it's absolutely doable. So I am an optimist. I think the level of education is going better and better. Let's not now, you know, in criticizing
Yeah.
what lacks today. Let's not forget what we progress, which is
Yeah.
phenomenal. And then keep going, but then make sure that we dial those areas that will help us truly make a difference for many people and to really truly impact the lives of many people everywhere. But it should really start with, you know, going hand in hand versus fighting.
I mean, when it comes to AI, there's still a great portion of skepticism among people and among normal people, but also in politics, for instance. I mean, we do have in Europe now this AI Act. There's a lot of talk about, okay, we need to watch out that AI is not taking over the control. We have discussions about AI companies are becoming too strong and too powerful, etc. So, what can we do so that people are getting less afraid about these developments? And is regulation the right way to go, or should we come from a different direction in order to have a positive relation with technology, which is at the same time not naive that we think technology can do everything and will solve all problems? So like this balance between optimistic on the one hand, but also a realistic angle on technology, and in particular on AI in this case.
Wow, this is the question. It is it's a difficult question, Philip, right? And so let me try to maybe breaking down into, and still keep the humanity aspect here. I'll break it down into two things. Number one, education will help us make sure we take it for what it is. It is technology, nothing else, right? Secondly, this education, as we said, it should be more than education, it should be knowledge. If we go deeply into one aspect, then we can really understand all complexities around it. And I would put it this way. We are here in Germany, right? And we have Kant. Kant was a man who was living long before we had cars, computers, or climate change. Right? And he was speaking about something that I find highly interesting and probably will help us, which is, he called it the synthetic a priori. It's about the intuitions from which all of our experiences are coming from, the intuitions, right? So human condition cannot be reduced to just following instructions, no matter how complex those instructions are. Therefore, machines can process information and are following our instructions, right? But humans make decisions and have this sensorial experience of the world, which machines cannot. So in a machine, you follow instruction. Humans choose to provide instruction. So from a Kantian perspective, technology, AI, cannot be moral agents. And this is how I deconstruct this whole theory, right? Because AI cannot formulate intentions in a moral context, right? AI robots, right, do not possess that human rational thinking capacity. They do not possess a free will to be able to understand what constitutes a rule. We can teach them, right? So the machines, or the machine is the experience itself. It is an empirical science. It's generative AI. Let's take it that. It's science, right? But natural intelligence is metaphysics. It focuses attention on the precondition for the experience itself, before the experience. And this is why I think there is no way for artificial general intelligence. For me, that is a science fiction that I do not sign up. Number one. Number two, to your second part of the question, which is very important, and that also I would say is in a way also a philosophical question, is do we need regulation? Is regulation the answer to all of this? It's probably not the answer to all, but it's very much needed, and we have to find the balance how we do regulation. So in my opinion, it is hugely important to have regulation. It is hugely important to put the boundaries into all this. It's important what kind of trust we can, and everyone is speaking these days about AI trust, right? And of course, you have all these issues around the world that technology is causing now. or the use of technology, not technology itself, right? The way humans are using technology, disinformation, humans choose to do that. Safety, security, cyber security.
Absolutely. Important difference.
Yeah, the black box, yes, but it's made by humans. So this is why it is super important to build trust in AI. And the way to do this, as you said, is really probably through regulation. It's really prioritizing governance, is understanding what the risks are, is understanding compliance. And I think many, many companies are making great progress, especially the larger ones that have to focus on this, but they focus on a responsible approach to the creation and the use of any AI agents, right? And as you know, the EU has this new AI Act now, which is the European regulation and for AI. And there is a lot that has to be done. And to your point, we have to be careful that we are not jeopardizing Europe's competitiveness in innovation by, regulating to a point that we paralyze our innovation.
Nancy,
yeah.
Sorry, if you've got more to say, please do.
No, all good, Anne. But we're getting all excited about these big questions.
It's fascinating to hear you too. It's the first time that we've had Kant in our podcast, which I love to hear. I've studied some of it. But Nancy, you speak in your book about technical extravagance, which is a lovely word, a lovely combination of words, technical extravagance. How much technical extravagance do we need? Is it necessary or superfluous in our movement forward?
What a great question, Anne. I love this. Yeah, so I actually took out the book because I wanted to see what, but just the name. This is extravagance, taking Proust, his questionnaire, and applying it to the technical world, I think is a bit extravagant. It's a bit crazy. It's a bit extravagant, but I think we need it, Anne and Philip, because if we do not, extravagance is again a human trait, right? And we have to spark that imagination, which is already there, but we have to try and make it in a for good way, And if we can provide that safe environment for technical extravagance, then we can solve humanity's big problems. I'm not saying that we should try to live for 500 years. I think there is a question in this book, and you can read what all these 22 experts wanted to say about it. I was actually thinking about making a new edition of the book, because right now you have authors answering 22 questions, but I would like to take that one question which you asked about technical extravagance. And if you see someone like Peter Zeberg, who is a technical guy, and he says, I do not have any technical extravagance. But if you look at the Philosophers' answer, right, you will find beautiful, flowery creation of ideas, and I think we need somehow to stay excited and to create, in order to create new things. And so my hope is that we get to a point where our technical extravagance helps solve humanity's biggest problems, like cancer treatment, Alzheimer's treatment, doing it for good, not for weapons, doing it for freedom and for the advancement of human life. I do not need to live 500 years. For me, it's sufficient if I live whatever is written in my genes. I do not need to read my genes, but there is a lot of interesting progress in genetics. But I would say we need to stay extravagant as humans.
Nancy, where I struggle a bit is the fact that, taking into account the progress in healthcare and in social welfare in almost most of the countries worldwide, even taking into account more the southern countries, the standard of living has increased dramatically, and overall we have been solving a lot of problems over the last decades and even hundreds of years on the one side. On the other side, in particular at the moment, I have the feeling that people are not necessarily more happy today and are depressed. And in particular, when we take into consideration the young generation, we have a lot of young people lacking orientation and do not really know what should they do, and are sad, in particular also after this COVID crisis, etc. And so on the one hand, we have so many possibilities and assistance systems and technologies all around us, but on the other hand, once again, and I think it's not so easy to answer this also empirically, it seems like people are not necessarily getting more happy in this technological driven world. So where's the problem in the formula? What have we missed here? Because this is really something I'm reflecting a lot about, that we do have so much comfort all around us, but on the other hand, people are not really happy. I mean, generally spoken.
Wow. I mean, I don't even know how to start or how to answer this. Is a big, complex question. I can talk about maybe my personal values a little bit, to say, look, I mean, we are here in Western Europe. If you start comparing West to East, if you start comparing South to North, if you go to Africa, you'll get a very different feeling. So maybe we narrow this, this statement that people are not happy in the Western world. If you go to Tibet, people are happy. When they will get TikTok on their phones, they will start not being happy. Because a lot of what happens in social media, as you know, has deep impact on our brains. And so for my personal values, and maybe in this phase of my life, not being that young anymore, and I've seen the hardship in life as well, right? So everyone had harsh moments in life as well. But I would say, if you compare right now what happens in the Western part of the world, where we have food, it's warm in the house, we can afford to travel the world, we really do not lack mostly anything, right? And then we are not happy. You go to Africa, where people may be in a completely different state of economical challenges and issues, or you go to other parts of the Asian continent, and you will see a very different behavior. So it sounds to me like Europe or the Western world has to go back to our values. And I think that's a huge strength we can have in Europe, is really making sure we go back to our values of understanding where we come from, how much progress we make, and really starting to be a little bit more self-aware on how we progressed and what we all have at our disposal these days. And I think hopefully this travel that people do around the world helps seeing a little bit that there is another part of the coin, and the other side of the coin, right? That where people can be happy with much less. So I think one area is this plethora of possibilities. People are confused. Young people are unhappy because of this confusion, in my opinion. What should I do now? I call it the both era. You ask a young person, do you want black or white? They say, I want both. Do you want to go on a plane or on a boat cruise? I want both. Do you want to become a doctor, or maybe do another kind of handworks profession? I want both. So because we have so many opportunities, people get a bit confused, and I believe confusion leads to this probably perception of not being happy, and then we have the swarm intelligence happening around it, and so everyone is, like we say in German, complaining. Wie sagt man auf Deutsch in German? We say meckern auf hohem Niveau.
Yeah, meckern auf hohem Niveau.
Yeah. So, but the reality is we have to go back to some big values, and this is why I chose to talk today a bit about philosophers and mathematicians of the previous world, of our ancestors that helped us become who we are today. And I think we need to go back to knowledge. really go back and deep. This is so important what you do really in your with your initiative here. It's so important to bring that knowledge, to bring the competence, the competency, because it's so important to be competent. It's not enough to read and you know, what do we read today is the headlines in the news. This is not knowledge, this is not competence, this is superficial awareness, which I forget in 2 minutes after I read it. So we have to take the topics, go deep, really get competent.
Yeah, fully agree.
And then we will start to understand the world. And it's our, of course, you know, our generation's job to do it and help young people in that not easy endeavor.
Yeah, but Nancy, that costs a lot of time. Just as a remark, you know, and you know, looking around also in our business context, looking at leaders. I mean, everyone is busy, rushing from one meeting to another one, having so many projects in parallel. So I see also a lack of role models, and showing this to our very young generation, like watching a 30 minutes tutorial is not knowledge. Yeah, that's awareness. But actually, even the leaders, political ones, economic ones, they are not doing a good job and doing it differently. Actually, the other way around. Yeah, they're exactly doing this. So that's a little bit the issue I see, that we are really lacking role models with that regard.
Well, let me ask you this, Philip, and because I love to see that you have a PhD, and I would like to know in what you have your PhD, if I may ask you a question, but also what made you to choose that specific, because I'd love to know what is your PhD in and why did you do it?
Yeah, so my background is in the innovations and technology management. So the question about how is innovation created, and also technology and technology history, and you know what's the technical part of it, and what's the economic part of it, and what's the people part of it. So all of that is related with this field of innovations and technology management. And you know, I chose this field because I was always interested in. And I thought it will help me also to understand the world, because this is a world full of technology. So therefore, you know, maybe I go one step back and try to understand how these things in general evolve and develop, so that I can explain also all the other technologies and innovations in the future. So that was actually my motivator behind. And to be very honest, running a skill and education company today, it still helps me a lot. Yeah. So models like S-curves and Christensen and, you know, why steamships were dying, all of these things, you know, are still inspiration for me today. So, and by the way, last point, I really enjoyed spending time thinking about something. Yeah, not seeing it as a short-term project, but really carefully reflecting. And I know there were some days where I was sitting in the office, and my output was reading, you know, a couple of texts and maybe making a few notes. That's it. But it was quite inspiring for myself. So, and this is something I also don't have so much anymore today, being a CEO and having many positions. You know, finding the time to really think about something carefully. So. Yeah.
Yes, and here you are. We have the role models, right? We have the role models. You have to show them, and you do this also with this initiative, Anne and Philip. So I think that's very important. And to your point, we have to be passionate and live it, and hopefully you can make also money with it. It's important.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Sure.
It's really important. This is what I always say, you know, when I see young people doing startups in Berlin or elsewhere, yes, it's great to do startups. Make sure you make money at some point. You know, it's not just about raising money, raising capital, but make sure you create Umsatz, revenue. That's very important. But to your point, absolutely agree. We need to show the role models. I think we have them, but I love what you said about sitting down and thinking, reflecting, not this superficial back and forth between apps. I think, have you seen that in Germany? There is a school, I can't remember which beautiful, amazing school is now saying no to cell phones in a very democratic way, so that children choose not to use their cell phone for a couple of hours, maybe 3-4 hours. And they then interviewed the children, and they said, we feel much better now. We are connected more. We feel better. You know, there was a lot of resistance over the last years, and children wanted to use their cell phone. Now there is a lot of efforts also in the United States to decrease usage of cell phones. So I'm trying to put these rules so that we can think more and go beyond reading just the headline.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
I have one last question, Philip, before we disappear, because talking of role models, and just a little bounce back to you being a role model in AI, and you talking about having both, that the young people want to have both. Do you have both as an AI expert? What is an AI expert, Nancy, in your opinion?
Well, first of all, it's not me. Okay. I'm not an AI expert. I don't know if I can call myself an expert at all in anything. I am maybe a little bit, broad into disciplines. I wish I would be more of an expert in a few areas. But as you said, it takes a lot of effort to do that. And, it's like sports. You have to work your brain and to work your muscles. But I think an AI expert is like an expert in anything, right? So for AI in particular, I would say an expert is someone who really goes deep and understands you should be able to program. That's very straightforward. It's about algorithm. It's about programming languages. It's about working with computers in a deep way. So it's about statistics. It's about becoming a master in a specific programming language. It's about gaining extensive knowledge. Like Philip also said, you need to go deep. It's about structuring concepts. And I would say, you don't have to know it all. You don't have to do both. You don't have to know all of the programming languages, but at least know Python and R. And then you have the general purpose programming, at least, right? So I think an expert goes deep, very deep. It's almost like in medicine. We have the general practitioners who know a little about everything. And then you have the experts that know a lot about something. And so I would say we need to show the young generation the opportunities in what they can achieve in this space. And there will be a lot with technology in future. So this is just the start.
So let's come to our last two questions, and it's fully fine if you just answer them quite briefly. First of all, Nancy, thinking about your own future, about your own agenda for the next weeks, months, and maybe years, what are your 3 prioritized topics you have in mind for your career, for society? You can choose on which level you want to answer the question. So 3 topics which are, on the top of your agenda.
3 topics?
Yeah.
Number 1, love.
Yeah.
I want to love and be loved more than ever before. It happens right now. So that's great.
That's good to hear.
Number 1. Number 2, spend more time going deeper in the areas that interest me. And number 3, give back. If whatever it is, if it's time, if it's knowledge, if it's money, give back more. I have that luxury to do it today, and I should do more of that.
Fantastic.
That's wonderful. That really is wonderful. Nancy, I've got the very honor of asking the last question. Amongst all the millions of skills people could have for the future, which 3 would you advise people to learn now?
Which 3 skills to learn now? Really, number 1, analytical thinking. Very important in this world of confusion. Think analytically. Ask 5 times why behind one. Very simple thing. Think analytically. Number 1. Number 2, go deep. So really start, as we said, I think it's a bit of a common topic right now here in this conversation, is really go deep. So make sure that whatever you start learning, go deep. That's a skill. It's really a skill to understand and go deep dive, be detailed. And number 3, I think it's hugely important to understand how to collaborate. That's a skill as well. Collaboration and communication, how to collaborate with others in a positive way. And then communication skills, especially here in Europe. Learn there is a lot of good schools in Europe as well, but also the American School of Communicating concisely, precisely, and with insights.
Wow, Nancy, what a deep episode. Thank you so much. It was extremely inspiring, and I think we have touched a couple of topics we have been never touching before on our show. So what a pleasure to listen to you and to talk to you. Thank you so much for the inspiration.
Well, thank you, Anne and Philip. It was a deep honor and a great pleasure, and it was so fun. And thank you for the questions and also for your emotional iteration. I think that is very important, and it was touching my soul. So thank you for this conversation, Anne and Philip.
Thank you so much, Nancy. I'm also in the position to say thank you to the lady who not only moves furniture, but moves minds. It was our conversation today with Nancy Nemes, the founder of Miss AI and Humanize, a global leader in high tech. And if you, dear listeners, know somebody who can be just as inspiring as Nancy was today, then please send us an email at podcast@i40.de. And with our hashtag DigiCompetence podcast, you can follow what happens in our podcast. And those of you who are with us more often, they know Philip and I will be doing somersaults when you're with us again the next time. It's about being digitally competent with Philip Ramin and Anne Koak.